there was a voice, a thought, constantly saying, Agi, people are not interested in what you have to say. So that I was not even aware that it was there, but it was on the background. Every time I would meet someone new, or every time I would have an idea to speak up, but I could keep myself and not say anything, because what if people don't like it, or what if it is not good idea? Up to that time I thought that's who I was. After that time I thought, wow, this is really not who I am, and certainly it's not who I would like to be. And that really accelerated the journey and took me to the path more of speaking, because that was the thing that I lacked doing all my life up to there. I had to really take uncomfortable action.
Welcome to Unleash Thyself, a podcast where we journey into the depths of personal transformation, spirituality, and growth. I am Konstantin Morun, and today we are thrilled to welcome Agi Keramidas, a man whose story is a beacon for anyone seeking to redefine their path and purpose in life. Agi's journey from a successful career in dentistry to becoming a revered podcaster and mentor in personal development is nothing short of inspiring. At the pivotal age of 40, faced with a sense of unfulfillment and a desire for more, Agi embarked on a midlife awakening that propelled him into the realms of self-discovery and growth. His transition from someone who once found social situations challenging to a public speaker and host of the Personal Development Mastery podcast is a testament to the power of transformation. Through over 400 podcast episodes and conversations with greats like Brian Tracy, Mark Victor Hansen, and Dr. John Demartini, Agi has distilled invaluable insights on overcoming limiting beliefs, embracing spirituality, and the art of taking action towards someone's or one's desires. His first book, 88 Actionable Insights for Life, encapsulates his mission to move beyond more knowledge acquisition towards true personal transformation. In today's episode, Agi will share the catalyst for his profound career shift, the role of intuition and spirituality in guiding his journey, and the practical steps anyone can take to navigate their personal development path. We'll delve into the importance of mindset shifts, overcoming negative thoughts, and embracing the power of small actions to drive significant life changes. But before we start, I have a small favor to ask. Please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us continue to bring these transformative stories to light. Let's get started. Hello, beautiful souls. I have the pleasure to sit down today with Agi Keramidas. Agi, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Hello, hello, hello.
Konstantin, the pleasure is all mine, and it's great to speak with you again, because recently our roles were reversed, so you came as a guest on my
Exactly.
podcast.
I love that part, right? When we get, two people like-minded, doing similar things, but yet different things, get to talk to each other and get to ask each other questions, and that's the best way to form connection with people, from what I have seen. Now, I'll start in a spot where I found myself many years ago, and it seems that you were finding yourself too. Around the age of 40, you were a dentist, very successful career, right, with your master's degree in dentistry. Yet, there wasn't enough, meaning wasn't enough for your heart, for your soul. You were earning for something more. What do you think caused you to have that feeling when technically you had the dream, you had everything you could want, given your career, given everything else?
Let me start first of all. You used that word enough, and when you said that word enough, I thought to myself, is that really so? Was that a matter of not enough? So I don't. Yeah, so I'm starting with that, because I feel that it was not a matter of enough. It was a matter of being on the wrong path, rather than being on the right path and really need to go further. It kind of felt, and to answer your question, it was internal. It was, externally you can have the success or other people's respect of you, of what you're doing. However, when inside of you, you don't feel like going to work, that is an indication. When I, in particular, because you mentioned that period in my 40, when I was just after my master's degree, I had spent a considerable amount of time and money to do that master's degree in restorative aesthetic dentistry. So going on the other end of it after I've graduated and feeling that I don't really want to do any of that I spent 2 years on and tens of thousands of pounds on. That was really the trigger, because that I needed answers for that. It felt like, what's happening, what's wrong? Why am I not feeling there was no motivation, no internal desire to do these things, which came as a complete surprise to me. So that's what led the journey to shift it, to change it.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I love that you wanted the word enough, right? Because we get caught up, at least the way I see it, because I talk about myself. I got caught up in feeling because I had a great career, because I had, let's call it a great personal life, or at least a good personal life, because I had what many people would love to have in their life but don't, that should be enough. It felt like the external pressures were as such that this has to be enough.
Mm.
Yet, like you said, right, it wasn't necessarily about enough. It's not being necessarily on the right path. And I found myself at the same crossroad around the same age as you. I was about 37, 38, 30, well, 37 really when it started. And I turned 40 last year. And now, I see the transformation over those years and I'm like, wow, it's almost like you said, you're going on the wrong path. And then you made some shifts, aligned with the proper path as I see now. And everything else shifted, right? That was not enough became enough for me.
Mm.
And it sounds like you went on a similar journey, right? And of course, we took different paths, we took different forks in the road, so to speak. But let me ask you, what was the biggest catalyst for you to realize that, you know what, your decision to pursue this internal thing, whatever that internal thing was the right decision?
There were quite a few catalysts. The one that is probably the most significant one, because it was one of the first ones, and that was about 1 year after I started my personal development journey and the inner exploration journey. It was when I attended the Tony Robbins event, and I had a big epiphany on day 3 of the event. I had the epiphany that all this time in my life I was being held back, and I thought that I have been a very closed person, an introverted person, a very shy, uncomfortable in social situations. That's how I was all my life up to then. And I thought that's who I am. That was my character trait. It was like I was not even aware of that, but I had this, fixed mindset that this is who I am, and therefore that's how I will behave, and that's why I will be uncomfortable meeting anyone new. And on that event, I realized very clearly that this was not who I was. It was a limiting belief, really. That's how I describe it now. Of course, at that time, I didn't know it was, called that. But at that time, it was for me the realization that there was a voice, a thought, if we say, at the back of my head, that was constantly saying, Agi, people are not interested in what you have to say. So that I was not even aware that it was there, but it was on the background. Every time I would meet someone new, or every time I would, have an idea to speak up, but I could keep myself and not say anything, because what if people, don't like it, or what if it is not good idea? All these things were, up to that time I thought that's who I was. After that time I thought, wow, this is really not who I am, and certainly it's not who I would like to be. And that really, accelerated the journey and took me to the path more of speaking, because that was the thing that I lacked doing all my life up to there. I mean, even the idea of speaking in front of people would terrify me. I would not do it. So yeah, I changed quite rapidly after that.
Wow, Agi. I love that so much. And I fully understand what you mean because that's exactly how I've seen myself for a lot of my life. Keeping myself small, keeping myself
Mm.
in boxes with these limiting beliefs because I thought that's who I was. And it sounds like they were so, so similar. And I would imagine, because of course I had this conversation with many people in my life, all of us have a variation of that because of how and where we grew up, because of teachers, because of society, because of the culture you're born and raised in, where you have to follow what everyone else is saying, which means that your thoughts, your opinions, at least in the early years, doesn't necessarily matter as much,
Mm.
which leads you to create your own boxes more than others putting boxes on top of you. And I resonate with that so, so, so much. And like you, I had my own epiphanies around that. But let me ask you this. So you had that epiphany at this event. What changed immediately in your life? Or was it still a gradual process to go from that to pushing yourself out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm thinking where to start. I mean, there were things because that event was quite multifaceted or
Of
holistic in
course.
many ways, you could call it. There were things that started changing from my nutrition or things like that. But in terms of the actual the mindset of getting out of my closed, shy self and going out. One of the very first things that I did, there was a free 1 day event, which was, leading to sell a bigger event afterwards. That was about, it was a public speaking boot camp. And I thought this is, it was quite reassuring. He said, you don't have to speak, if you don't want to, you can, but we will teach you the mindset of public speaking, etc. So when I went to that event, safe in a way that, if I really feel uncomfortable, I don't have to stand up and speak at all. And I found myself at some point, the guy who was giving the presentation, Robert, a great guy, he said, "Who wants to come to the stage with me and help me out?" And I, I raised my hand without really thinking about it. Then I thought, oh. But anyway, I went up and I realized that I didn't die. Nothing bad happened. On the contrary, I got, a round of applause. That small action that I took, that took me out of my comfort zone, had a great reward at that time, that I felt more confident immediately. So at the end of that, day, I was quite happy to put my hand in my pocket and pay for the 5 day course, because I realized that there is a lot of potential for growth there for me. Uh, yeah, and through speaking, then I joined afterwards. I joined Toastmasters for a period of time. I gave some speeches. It was a, a period. What I want to, and I think it's important to emphasize this in this conversation, was that it did not, happen easily. I had to really take uncomfortable action. I remember I knew a person that was running a networking event, and as soon as he heard that I had done that 5 day course, he said, "Okay, come to my event now and speak in a couple of months if you want." And that was like 50 people in the audience, so nothing like a course. So I said yes. I did not, even though I was terrified. I thought this, it could go wrong. I could, embarrass myself. But I said yes. I prepared a speech carefully. Interestingly enough, it was about mindset. I still remember it. And, that's really what I want to highlight, because it might sound like it was easy, or that I found, a flair and I started doing it and there was no actions out of the comfort zone. But on the contrary, I really had to push myself continuously, and then the next, and then the next. It was not But of course, every time I would push myself out of the comfort zone, I would enjoy it. I would feel more confident that I can do this, and it's a journey. It's ongoing. Uh, yeah.
I love that, Agi, so much because as you're talking there, one quote perhaps came to mind. Maybe it's a quote, maybe it's just a saying, which is if something scares you, if you're afraid of something, that's probably a sign for you to go in that direction, not away from it.
Mhm. I
And
agree.
I, I heard that many times in my life, but it wasn't until more recently that I was like, huh, let me sit with that. Let me reflect on that. Let me see what comes up when I sit with that. And I had a great example talking to a friend last week. So as you know, I went on a plant medicine journey, a few years ago now. And at the time when I was doing my research, I uncovered something called a darkness retreat. And a
Mm.
darkness retreat is essentially a place where you go. There's no plant medicine, there's no anything like that. But they have these rooms devised where once you go in, you blow the candle out, it's pitch black. There's no sounds, there's zero light. And it's you and your thoughts for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, or 11 days. And when my friend mentioned that to me, because she reminded me I knew about this 4 years ago, she's like, "Oh, I would want to do that." I was like, "No way!" I mean, I've done plant medicine, I've done hypnotherapy, I've done this. I'm so scared. I would never touch that. And the course of that 1 hour conversation, we kind of dropped the subject, but it was still playing in my mind. And I'm like, you know what? There's something there. If I'm so afraid, why am I so afraid to be by myself? Why am I so afraid to be with my thoughts? There might be a reason for me to actually go in and do it. And now to relate it back to what you said, I find that many of us find ourselves at this crossroads where we kind of have an inkling that we want to do something, but then those boxes come back in and it's like, no, you're small. You gotta stay within your box. You gotta play within your limiting beliefs, within your perceptions of who you are. And yeah, that's I find that when I hear stories like yours, it re-emphasizes the importance to really listen to your intuition, to your inspiration, to what you truly feel in your heart. And I believe you talk a bit about this too, around intuition and whatnot. How do you tap into your intuition? How do you tap into that inspiration to be able to follow these? Because it sounds like, of course, when you put your hand up, that was more like intuition than anything else.
Yes, it was. Uh, but there is, always when you have any kind of emotional or unconscious response like this, that the urge to put my hand up in that case, there is also the other side of the thoughts that come to mind that want to keep you from doing it because of it's this safety, because it is your mind wants to keep you safe. That's what it's trying to do, and that's why it does not allow you and finds all these elaborate reasons and excuses, because it knows you very well. It knows no one knows you better than your mind, so it can find exactly that thought that will freeze you on your tracks and not do it. So there is a matter of um, becoming aware of it, really. Becoming aware of this thought in the head. And you said earlier, and I'm going to come back to the intuition
Of
you asked,
course.
but you said earlier about the darkness
Uh-huh.
retreat. I have not done it. I would love to do it. It is in my horizon, so I think it's only a matter of when I will come across it. Uh, what I have done is a vipassana, a silent meditation retreat, which was for 10 days. So we could see, so there was not this element of removing the visual stimulus, but there was no speaking, completely no communication for 10 days. And what's important, and I think it's similar to what you were describing about the darkness retreat, is that you during that time you can't hide from your mind. The mind is there constantly, and you can hear it. And for me, the, let's say, the volume of the internal dialogue intensified. It was, I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't. And it made me realize, because 10 days is a long time. 1, 2, 3 days, you say, okay, well, I can, I can maybe, but 10 days is a long enough time to really get to that understanding that the mind will do these things. And the more you hear that and be aware of it, and again, there's nothing else that you can do. I mean, even during the meditation, the mind will still go there. But for me, it was even more intense that the few hours a day that we did not have meditation, when I was walking or when I was eating in silence, these were the times that. So yeah, that's I'm sharing that as something that is very important to face our mind. All these retreats or experiences, I believe, help a little bit to understand what's going on here between our ears, and why does it dictate what we do, what we don't, what we will achieve in life potentially, and so on.
I love that, actually, Agi. Thank you for sharing that. And I have heard of those silent retreats, and I have some friends that have done them. And you're right. It's interesting when you remove an element that you're so used to, and let's say take it for granted, like speaking or seeing or hearing. It does amplify everything else, which means the noise in your head gets amplified as well.
Can I add to that, just to
Yeah.
clarify? Apart from not speaking, there was also no reading. There were no mobile phones. There was no, you couldn't write or read. There was nothing else to occupy your mind. So it was either meditation or, apart, from the bodily functions, there was nothing else to do.
Yeah, so that takes it to, yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So then a darkness retreat sounds like it's doing that plus adding the no vision and
Mm.
possibly no sounds because you are in a fairly soundproof type of room. Wow, so that would, yeah, that's why it is said that it's pretty difficult, but the transformations that come after are just phenomenal. I had a chance to briefly talk to some people that have gone through it, and it's actually mind blowing. I mean, to the effects of plant medicine, to the effects of like some of the strongest things someone can do in life. That's the
Mhm.
transformation you can go through. But one thought that came up for me when you're talking about the mind, right, and the noise and how it got noisier and noisier. One thing I again realized a bit later in life, and I'm curious to see if you felt the same way, is that very often we associate ourselves with our thoughts and our beliefs. So, like you mentioned this already, right? Like, this is my belief, which means this is who I am. This is my thought or my thought pattern. That means that this is who I am. And that's something that I realize it's not actually true because the only thing you actually have 100% power over is your thoughts and beliefs. You may not prevent them from coming up, but you can interrupt them. You can change them. You can move them in a different direction. And I'm curious if you've seen more of that show up in your life.
Absolutely. In a short, in one word, there is, the more one realizes that the thoughts that occupy one's mind are not even they're not even our thoughts. Some thoughts, many of the thoughts that we have are completely repetitive and similar to the same thoughts that you have, Constantine, or, you know, it's like, for example, I'm hungry. This is not my thought. It is, there are some very common thought patterns, and we were talking about limiting beliefs, that feel that I'm not enough, whatever words it may use to express in one's self. It is still the same thought that is, I was thinking of using the word universal. I don't know if it is universal, but it is, it's collective. It is not really just ours. So, absolutely, we tend to identify with that constant stream of thoughts, of that internal dialogue. That we sometimes I think of it as, there is you are sitting down here and a train comes and takes you towards very quickly towards one direction, and you're not even aware of it. Before you know it, I am standing here, and then uh, 10 seconds later, I'm very far away on a fast moving train that is taking me certainly not where I would like to go. And the worst thing is that I'm not even aware that I'm on that train. So it takes me, and that's why sometimes, and I think many people can relate to that. You start thinking of, let's say, an unfavorable outcome of a situation in your personal life, something that might not go well, and then you start dwelling on it and thinking more and more about it, and then 2 minutes down the line you have thought of everything that could go wrong, and you actually start feeling, you have emotions that will match that, and you start feeling bad. That's because the train has taken you to that direction and you didn't even you weren't aware of it. So the more one realizes that that train, this is not, you always have the ability to, as you said, the thoughts will come, but you have the ability to realize that and detach. That's the word I was looking for. Detach from them, even for a split second, enough, to get off the train, shall we speak. Because once that happens, you again regain the power to choose whether you will have a conscious thought of the opposite direction, or more often than not, another train of random thought will take you to a different direction. So in my experience anyway, it is constant, this kind of situation that I am unaware of my thoughts, and then I become aware of my thoughts momentarily, and then again I get unaware of it. So yeah, that's how it's been working for me. And thanks also for because this way I described it, I haven't described it before. So thank you for allowing me to share it in such a way.
I love the analogy, right? Because you're absolutely right. Because some thoughts or beliefs come up that we don't necessarily know where they come from, right? But then, like you said, it takes you on a path. And the train is a beautiful analogy because you can move fast, right?
Hmm.
So it can move you really quick. And you mentioned how the thoughts will then lead to a feeling. And that's what I talk about a lot these days, what I've come to realize, right? So then the thoughts take you to the feeling. The feeling, of course, results in an action. And inaction is also an action, right? So if you're feeling bad, then the actions you're going to take cannot really be amazing. And then what results from actions is what you have, what you get, what you
Mm.
bring into your life, right? So it's not just that the thoughts take you down this rabbit hole of feeling bad, but there's actual consequences. That's called consequences, a negative connotation. Let's call them outcomes. There are outcomes that come out of having those negative feelings. And procrastination can come up, hesitation, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, depression, all of those things can come up. And then it's impacting your actions and it's impacting what you have in life. So that enough we talked about earlier, that zest for life, that desire to be and do more.
Mm.
Because you allow those thoughts and beliefs to exist and take you on these beautiful scenic routes with a train, right? Because let's be honest, I mean, you live in Europe, trains are everywhere. They're not as much in North America, but there's a lot of scenic routes a train can take you. Doesn't mean that scenic route in your mind taking you is going to be beneficial to you long term. It might be beneficial to you short term, but it wouldn't be beneficial to you long term. And that's what you come to as well, right? Because I'll give you a great example from my life right now. And I'm curious to see what you think because this just happened last night, and I'm still grappling with it. So I have a fairly new vehicle. It's 2023. I bought it about a year ago. And I got in the car last night after it's been snowing all day. Then it switched to freezing rain. Then it switched to rain. And as I drive down to meet some of my friends, water starts leaking in from the roof,
Whoa.
in the front consoles, in the back seats, pretty much the entire vehicle. And I'm like, wow. Again, this is like a pretty much brand new vehicle, big car, and I'm like, huh. Now, old me would allow these thoughts, these beliefs, whatever I had, take me on the darkest paths. And I mean, of course, they came up because I would imagine it's normal when something, let's call it negative, happens. You're like, yeah, you know what? It's not great. But then I used everything I known to see if I can detach myself from those thoughts and realize that A, it's just a vehicle. B, it will be okay because it's been okay so far. And trust that this will get solved. So I got to my destination to meet my friends, gotten out, cleaned up the car because I was fortunate enough to have some paper towel and clean up the car, go to where I was going, tell them briefly, hey, sorry for the delay, I had to deal with this. And then I let that go. And for the entire night, spending time with my friends and talking, the thoughts came up maybe twice, and I was able to detach myself again from them fairly quickly. Now, the reason I share this is because 1 year, or 2 year ago, me would pretty much cancel up on my friends and be like, no, I need to go deal with this. Even though it's Saturday night, no shop is open, I can't really do anything till Monday anyway. And then I would allow the train, like you said, to take me in this direction while I would think about all the scenarios and
Mhm.
all those things. Now, fast forward to last night, I left the place, more water came down. I'm like, yeah, this is not cool. More thoughts came up again, working to remove myself from them. And then this morning, again, they of course, they will come up. And again, detaching myself from it. And it's this constant dance where thoughts come up, you have a choice. Do you stay with them? Do you let them go? And it happens often, especially with things that we deem to be negative in our life. I mean, I see the same with like friends that have lost people or things in their life, jobs, people, animals. I see it with many people that, they get into a crash or they get into an accident, and then that's all that drives their life. So, anyway, the reason I share the story with you is because I'm curious to see your thoughts on how one should approach a situation like that from your perspective, or what you've uncovered in your own battle with thoughts and beliefs.
I like you just said the word battle. Earlier on you used the word dance for. You said it's a constant dance, and
Yes.
I'm not sure if dance is the most appropriate way, because dance implies some gracefulness in what is happening. I think what you said battle, or the word I would use would be wrestling. That I think is more appropriate to what's happening, because all of a sudden you are in a, let's say, a neutral position, and all of a sudden your opponent, in that case your thoughts, do a really unexpected move and throw you on the floor. So then you have to, that's it's and you have to get up again. So uh, I feel that this for me expresses more what is happening there. But I will have to say, with your example that you gave, that I commend you for being able to do that, because it's not easy at all. I put myself, what you were saying, I put myself in your position, and I thought it would be probably very difficult for me to enjoy the evening with my friends, even if I had gone there, because my mind would be constantly on that. And it's a fantastic skill to be able to push it away, because really there's absolutely nothing that you can do at that moment. You can either allow that darkness of thoughts to dominate you and ruin your evening, or your relationship, or your health, because we do things out of self-sabotaging generally when that happens. Or you can accept it, that I will deal with it on Monday, can't do anything anyway, might as well enjoy the time that I have here on my friends. So thank you for sharing that example, and I think it is a very people can relate with something like that happening. I know I can, because it is, and that's why I congratulate you for being aware of it and not allowing that to ruin your your evening. Which what happened, this case is what happens in many situations. We just when we realize that this is, I'm coming back to the battle that I said, the wrestling match. It keeps on going. So yeah, well done for letting go. And I don't know. I think I went a different way to what you asked me, but it felt like it was important, to emphasize that.
No, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you. And I love the word you used there, the wrestling. I mean, for me, it's, I guess I came from more of a entitled position of saying dancing, because now it feels like a dance. This comes up, I dance with, I say, okay, I'm moving on, I'm going with another partner now. It's one of those open scene dances.
Hmm.
But for most of us, and for me in some situations and in the past especially, it was like a wrestling match where it takes you and it drags you down, it throws you around, and it teaches you a number or two. And I love that. And you got me thinking about, okay, so what caused me to get to this point, right? And there's many things that we don't need to get into that. But there was a second part to it which I thought was really interesting. So I left the party or the gathering, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to call my father, my parents, and start texting my friends. Oh, can you believe what happened? And I had that's a thought that came up, and I was like getting pumped up. And then another thought came back, or maybe an intuition, maybe inspiration, was like, do you really need to share negativity with those around you? Like, what good is it gonna do? Is it gonna feel you better? Is it gonna make them feel better? Like, there's literally no purpose behind that, at least in the moment it came. And I decided not to share with anyone. I'm like, the people at the party knew, but I didn't care. And I'm like, yeah, there's no purpose. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue the negativity pattern, because see, old me would go down this path. It's like something negative happens. Oh, you gotta tell people. You gotta tell people, because that's what we as humans do a lot. We feed on the negativity, and we love to share that with everyone else. So I'm curious to see what you have found in these scenarios where, like, as you're going on your path, how has negativity and positivity shifted in your life?
It's a great question. And what you were saying about not calling the people and inviting them into, I call it a pity party.
Yes,
So it
yes.
is, it's let's all cry together for this great misfortune that can happen to me. And the one particular way I believe many people do this, and they don't do it consciously, of course, but we were talking about it, but they do it, is when there are health issues and people start to talk about their health problems with pretty much everyone they encounter, which it is that it's inviting others into this pity party of poor me. And of course, not only it does not solve anything, you also lower the vibration of the other people that maybe that's not what they wanted to hear about. But I think even more importantly than that, you maintain yourself in a vibration of poor me and this negativity. You maintain that and you remain in that situation, whereas you could easily go to a different direction mentally first and then in other ways, but and get out of it. So it came up as an example when you were saying just to these are so common things, I believe, in human behavior, human thinking. uh, you asked me about the negativity and the positivity. I, I can't think of a very simple, concise answer to give, or a specific example that I the something that I deemed negative, I started seeing it in a positive way. I think I will get back to what I said earlier, because I believe it's really important as a message also, if you
Of
want,
course.
is to become aware of it. Once you become aware, once you detach from a second, not longer than that, just from a second, detach from it, then your more objective self or assessment of that, you'll say, oh, this is negative. I mean, it doesn't, it's very easy to see that it's negative and it's dark and it's driving you down and everyone else. But when you're on the train or on it, you don't see it. So that's again, I believe a message I want to. I don't know why I keep on reinforcing this today. I suppose it is a message that someone needs to really believe that it is so.
Yeah, love that, Agi.
Yeah.
Love that.
Hmm.
Love that. As we progress into this, I do wanna shift gears slightly, and I mean, it's really not shifting gears that much. You mentioned vibrations. You mentioned your frequency, right? And for many people, those are spiritual beliefs, right? I mean, there's some science in that with quantum physics and whatnot, but people don't fully believe in that yet. I'm curious. I know more recently you made a shift yourself, more on the spiritual path, at least with your podcast,
Mhm.
across other things. How do you see spirituality play a role in your life?
What a question. It has played a role in my life since in my early 20s when my best friend in university dropped out of university and went to Russia, Siberia, became a shaman. And I had the opportunity to see his spiritual transformation. And that was the initial trigger that, because I was never religious, like you, I was raised baptized Christian Orthodox. So, but I was never religious. We were not like a really religious family going to church, etc. We say, well, I believe in God. That was, the that's it. But the spirituality and when I say that, what comes is more like the belief or the understanding, if you want, that we are part of a bigger um, organism or a bigger something bigger than us anyway.
Yes.
Describing it is irrelevant because that's really where the limitations come in, because we can't describe infinite. But being part of something bigger than us and being connected to all the other elements there are in this field, if you want to call it, or universe, or God. It again, it doesn't matter how one calls it. What comes to me is that analogy of the waves in the sea. So a wave can say individually that I am a wave, but it is not individual from the rest of the sea and the rest of the waves. It is constantly connected. And once we realize that, that's kind of how I see the what spirituality is, the sea, and we are the waves. We are all connected together, and but it's easy to see that we're separate because you know that's how our mind works. Spirituality has been in my life other times consciously, other times less consciously. It has always played a major role in my life and my transitions. For example, when I left my home country, Greece, to come to the UK, or when we were, as I shifted my professional, direction, there was an element. Maybe an element is not the right word to use. The spirituality was driving all that. That's how I see it. Of course, it is expressed by physical actions and some thoughts that come or appear, inspiration, all these, things that happen. But for me personally, it guides. It always has, and I believe always will guide my life. Even though, and I will share that, to be completely transparent, I'm not always aware of it. Sometimes I feel that there isn't, but even when I can't feel it, I know, and that's more like a belief in here rather than, proof, or I don't have any proof, but I have the conviction in my heart that, and that is enough for me. I know, I have this knowing of it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it sure does. It sure does,
Mm.
Agi. That was beautiful. It's very similar to how I feel and what I see and what I don't see, obviously, and what I hear, what I get. And when it comes to that knowing within us that something is guiding us, that something is helping us on this path, that's such a beautiful realization because all of a sudden you're not alone. All of a sudden you don't have to rely on this only or even at all. And
Mhm.
now that you will be taken care of. Now, I had some people challenge me and say, well, I mean, if that's the case, if that's true, then where does free will come in? And the way I see it is that what does a guide do? A guide says, hey, we should go in this direction. I believe this is the best thing we can do. But you have the free will to say, you know what, guide, I respect what you're saying, or maybe I don't, doesn't matter. I choose to go this other direction. And that's how I see this connection, just like you said, right? We get to a fork in the road, to a decision point, and I can go left or right. The guide might push you slightly, push you meaning like give you a hint, give you a direction, go right. But you still have the choice to go left, and many of us take the left turn because we use our brain or whatever other reason. And it sounds like that's pretty much what you're talking about as well.
There's a great analogy. Again, I will speak with because you mentioned free will, and of course that's a huge topic. But we do have the ability to move around, but there is the way the best description I've read was, imagine a moving a cart. A cart that moves in one direction, and in the cart there is a rope, and there is a dog tied to the end of the rope. All right, so the cart is moving one direction. Depending on how long this leash is, the dog has the ability to roam to the left, to the right, generally. So that is, I believe, the free will. However, the overall direction of where it will go, it is dictated by where the cart is going. And it's what a cart represents. That's a different, probably a different conversation altogether. But yes, we do have, in my personal opinion, we do have the ability to roam a bit and have exercise our free will to some extent, though not if our life's path is meant to take us, or our destiny, if you want, or any other word concept you want to use. If we're meant to go north, I don't believe we can go south. Eventually, the cart will drag us to the direction. We might start exploring the way, but it will drag us to where we're meant to go.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I can't say I fully agree, based on my own beliefs, of course, and based
Hmm.
on what I know. Perhaps the analogy is not the one I would use, but it does give me some reflection points here, right? Because you can look at many people in our lives and they get to be old and getting close to dying.
Hmm.
And there has been quite a bit of research into that, and people get asked, what is your biggest regret? And many of them, pretty much every single one, says, not living the life I wanted to live, but living the life that others wanted me to live.
Yeah.
So that's an example of being perhaps guided. Maybe the guidance wasn't as strong, and you always chose the different path, which meant that you did go south instead of north, right? So I do 100% agree with you that there are some people where the pull is much stronger, where that cart is like on a train track and there's really no deviation.
Hmm.
However, with many other people, I feel like the free will is, let's call it, stronger. And they go through the entire life without actually getting to why they came here for, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I like the fact that you say that. I don't know if that is the way it works either. It is for me. with my own knowledge and understanding of how things work up to this point anyway, that's how I see it.
Of course.
Perhaps next year I will reflect on this and say, no, this is really not how it works at all. But yeah, it's great to have the, you know, the communication and seeing that, yeah, it might be like that or not.
Regardless of how you and I see this or anyone else, the bottom line is you have guidance, you have some free will. How much is pretty much irrelevant. You know you have both. So why not tap into both? Right? And most people don't tap into the guidance piece, which
Hmm.
was me because I was pretty much all here with my mathematics background and computer science and engineering. I just wanted facts, 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 which if you do this, then you cannot tap into that intuition, inspiration, into the guidance. So how do how do you make the shift now that you know it? And that's the path I'm on. So Agi, that this has been such a beautiful conversation. And for those in the audience that didn't catch it at the beginning, Agi and I had an episode on his podcast, which is Personal Development Mastery. So please go check it out. It's an awesome show. It's fairly popular, right, Agi? It's like top 1.5%.
It is, yes.
Yeah, right. So congratulations on that. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
people, go check it out. I mean, if you liked anything that we talked about, and I'm sure you have, go check Agi out. And Agi, before I let you go for the day, any last thoughts, inspiration coming up for you that you want to share that we haven't talked about?
Yes, there is something that is, yeah, we haven't talked about. I will give an invitation to the listener. Um, if there is something that you have been wanting to do, that you have been thinking about doing, that you have like this desire that you would like to do, whatever that might be, it's completely personal from person to person. I will invite you to take today some small action towards it. It might be, checking a website on the computer about it, or it could be, throwing the cookies out of the cupboard, or it could be, finally doing that meditation that you wanted, or whatever else it is. I invite you to take any small action towards that calling that you feel inside you. It doesn't matter what happens after that. Miracles can happen after that, but it doesn't matter. Just focus on this one simple action you can do today towards in that direction.
Yeah, love that beautiful reminder and yeah, pretty much action taking mindset that people should go after. And I love that, Agi. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you again. And yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Konstantin.